Hope this November has been treating you well. I almost forgot what month it was. I will be the first person to say that I am not necessarily the best at staying on track with time and appointments and things when it comes to my podcast release. So I apologize for that, but it has all been for a really good purpose. And I hope that you'll understand that when I put episodes out, I am not simply just trying to create content for there to be something there. I really want all of these episodes to be about supporting you on your journey and whatever that is. So, kind of been going through this transformation of what it means to truly heal, what healing really means for people. Because a lot of times, especially currently, we feel we need to heal because we're broken or something's not working or we need to be fixed. And I'll be the very first person to say that I have believed that about myself, that I was broken and needed to change. And in many ways, that sets us up to judge ourselves, to give ourselves a lot of self-hate and self-denial for who we are, where we came from, and where we want to go. It's very difficult to shift limiting beliefs and transform and transcend through the things that we go through on a day-to-day basis if we are stuck in the cycle of judging ourselves and not giving ourselves the compassion we deserve. So I want to be the first to say that I've been going through a transformation of deep self-compassion, of really recognizing where I've come from. And first and foremost, I want to take a moment to talk a little bit about breaking generational cycles. As some of you know, maybe some of you don't, but some of you may know that one of the things that I specialize in is working with ancestor allies. So in my healing work, I actively call on and use ancestry and ancestor power. And in order to live like this and do this kind of work, you have to be willing to listen to the ancestors when they say, you're falling into a family cycle. Are you ready to break this generational curse? Are you ready to spawn generational healing? Are you ready to lead the next generation? Generational trauma is something that I feel like we can all say we have some part in some part of. There are great things, I'll say that, there are great things that are passed down from generation to generation. Like, if your family is very close together and they really are like glue, your family, everybody sticks together. That's passed down through the generations. That's a generational blessing. But then we talk about generational trauma. And I think especially for Black folks, for Indigenous people, and for other people of color who are otherwise marginalized by society, there is a lot of generational trauma that at this time presently can't even fully be addressed because the current state of things, the state of our society is such that we are continuing to be traumatized day by day. And so it hasn't ended. A lot of the things that are traumatic haven't ended. So it's difficult to be in a state of post traumatic growth if you are currently living in the environment that caused that trauma, right? That's a basic tenet. And that's not to say that you can't live a beautiful, good, amazing life as a person of color, Indigenous person, Black person. That's not to say that at all. But that is to say that there are currently generational traumas that are still currently happening for many of us. And so there's a lot to unpack there when we talk about generational trauma and how it's passed down through the line. So this episode is for my cycle breakers. This is for those of you who are ready to break a cycle. This is for the black sheep of the family, and for my white brothers, sisters, siblings, people out there. This is for you too, because you are also experiencing a generational trauma. Racism is experienced on both sides. Sexism is experienced on both sides. This isn't just only the victim is experiencing it. When you're talking about souls know no difference between you and me. And so maybe you are breaking the generational curse of perpetrating aggression and carrying out racist acts against people who don't look like you. Generational trauma is broad. It can mean a lot of things. And right now, it's deeply timely. It's timely. Because we are living in a situation, in a world where we cannot go on as we have been, and yet we don't see the way forward. And in many ways, the way forward is actually where we have been. The way forward is the past. Something about the past is the past and the present exist right now here in this moment. And this is important for you cycle breakers to understand, especially my cycle breakers. Listen up. The past is in the present. Everything that existed in the past is happening again right now. It unfolds again in the now. And you could be living out the life your mother always wanted. You could be living out the life your father always wanted, or your great-grandfather always wanted. And as a cycle breaker, that means sometimes that you're reaching for more than anyone in your family has ever been or had or done. You're reaching so far that you're experiencing things that they have no frame of reference for. They would have wanted that thing for themselves, right? They would have wanted that thing for themselves. They would have chosen that, something like that. And yet you're the one doing it. And so you get that crabs in a bucket scenario where you're the one breaking the mold. but people don't even realize that they've been in a mold. Your family doesn't realize they've been in a mold and they've been following programming. Okay, this is the generational trauma piece. It's programming set in from when we're young, from when we're 6 months old. We can have programming about who we are and who we're going to be and who we're going to grow up to be. And the tricky thing about this is these things aren't always explicit. It's not explicit. It's not said directly out loud. It's not said, especially for my people who come from low income, very poor families, and no one in your family went to college. And then for some reason, when it's time for you to go to college, your family is the one that's trying to hold you back. They're the ones saying, "You really gonna go all the way there?" Or "Who do you think you are?" You've heard these things. And it's because you are changing and growing and turning into something that they didn't think was possible for themselves. And you are hearing all of the darkest part of themselves come out. Whenever someone looks at you and says, "Who do you think you are to do this or that and the other? Who do you think you are to go to college? Who do you think you are to move across the country and go to the beach every weekend? Who do you think you are to travel the world?" When you hear people say that, that's actually what they tell themselves. That's actually them speaking for themselves. Because what they're really saying is, "I know I could never do that. I'm not good enough for that." Your cycle breaking will trigger other people. And that's a reality that you have to deal with if you're a cycle breaker. Now, my cycle breakers, you're going against the grain. You might be going against the grain of society, not just of your family society, not just of the people in your culture society, but the entire society, the world society, of how things are, how they've always been. It's always been like this in the United States. If you are one of the first women that ever went into the military, well, it's always been men. When they decided that women could be combat soldiers and be on the front lines, well, it's always just been men. These are people who are ready to break cycles. No, I want to do this. I am choosing my destiny. You're not choosing it for me. And that scares the crap out of people who are living in current programming. That scares the crap out of them. Because then they'll have to ask themselves, why am I continuing to live as I am? I'm not even living in my own authentic truth. So who are you to live in your truth? Who are you to get to live the life you want? I'm not living the life I want. So this goes deep because it's not just that you are looking inside yourself and shifting things that have been, you're feeling the pain. If you're healing trauma, generational trauma, you're not feeling just your own heartbreak. You are feeling the heartbreak of your mother, of your grandmother, of your great grandmother. You are feeling and healing emotional ties that go back generations. And that's the work, right? That's the work. That's where that comes in. This is the shadow. This is the depths. This is the void. This is what we enter into. And so, as you're on your journey, as you're moving along, as you're doing these things, recognize that this cycle did not start with you. It didn't start with you. It probably didn't even start with your grandmother. But you're deciding as a cycle breaker that you want it to end with you. And that's what we're called to. And so this is just the first of many, many episodes about generational trauma, because I feel it is one of the most pressing issues of our time. And we need to start to address it, because if we don't, we'll be forced to. As they say, change before you have to change. It's change because you're ready. Choose to be ready. Thanks so much, everyone.